The transport ship shuddered as it docked with Apex Prime Station. Kim Dae-ho pressed his face against the small window and stared at the massive structure floating in space. The station was bigger than any city he had ever seen on Earth. Metal, towers stretched in every direction, connected by bridges that glowed with alien lights. Dae-ho took a deep breath and picked up his single bag. He was 17 years old and very far from home. 3 months ago, he had been a regular student at Seoul Military Academy. Now he was the first human ever chosen for the exchange program at the Galactic Military Academy. The airlock opened, with a hiss. The corridor beyond was filled with beings Dae-ho had only seen in training videos. A tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms walked past, carrying what looked like weapons. Another being with scales instead of skin glided by, on legs that bent backward like a bird. "Human Cadet Kim Dae-ho," a voice called out. Dae-ho turned to see a massive figure approaching. The being was at least 3 meters tall with gray skin that looked like stone. Red eyes glowed in a face that had too many teeth. This had to be a Krolex, one of the warrior races that helped run the academy. "I am Instructor Vex," the creature said in heavily accented but clear English. "Follow me." They walked through corridors filled with cadets from dozens of different species. Some looked almost human except for strange colored skin or extra limbs. Others were so alien that Dae-ho could not figure out which end was their head. All of them stopped to stare at him as he passed. "They have never seen a human before," Instructor Vex explained without looking back. "Your species is new to the galactic community. Many wonder if you are strong enough to survive here." Dae-ho said nothing. He had heard similar doubts from his own instructors back on Earth. Humans were smaller and weaker than most galactic species. They had no natural armor, no claws, no built-in weapons. What they did have, his teachers had told him, was something harder to measure. The dormitory corridor was long and lined with doors. Each door had symbols that Dae-ho could not read, but Instructor Vex stopped at one near the end. "Your room," Vex said, pressing a panel that made the door slide open. "You will share with 3 others. Classes begin tomorrow at dawn cycle." The room was larger than Dae-ho expected, but still felt crowded with 4 beds arranged around the walls. 3 other beings were already inside, and all of them looked up when he entered. The first was roughly human-sized, but covered in what looked like living crystal. The crystal shifted color from blue to green as the being moved. This had to be a Zinthari. The creature was sitting on one of the beds, reading from a datapad with shaking hands. "I am Park Ji-woo," the Zinthari said in a quiet voice that sounded like wind chimes. "I apologize for taking the bed by the window. I can move if you prefer it." "No, that is fine," Dae-ho replied, setting his bag on an empty bed. "I am Kim Dae-ho. From Earth." The second being was much larger, with red skin and arms that bulged with muscle. Bone ridges ran along his forehead, and his hands ended in claws. A Vicarian warrior. He was doing some kind of exercise that involved lifting his own body weight using only his arms. "Lee Hyun-woo of Clan Bloodfang," the warrior said without stopping his exercises. "Your species sent only one to represent them. Bold or foolish, time will tell." The third roommate was the most unusual. He had pale blue skin and 4 arms, each ending in hands with 6 fingers. His head was larger than a human head, and his eyes were completely black. A Nexian, one of the mathematician races. "Choi Min-ho," the 4-armed being said while somehow writing on 4 different datapads at once. "I am calculating the probability of surviving the academy trials. For most species, the chances are not good." "How not good?" Dae-ho asked, sitting on his bed. "The final trial has maintained a 90% death rate for 300 years, Min-ho answered, not looking up from his calculations. "Of 200 cadets who enter, only 20 leave alive." Ji-woo's crystal shifted to a darker blue. "My people have sent 47 cadets to this academy over the past century. Only 3 have graduated. The rest died in the trials." "My clan has better numbers," Hyun-woo said with pride. 1 in 4 Vicarian cadets survives. We are warriors born." "What about humans?" Ji-woo asked quietly. "How many of your people have graduated?" Dae-ho was quiet for a moment. "I am the first human to attend." The room fell silent. Minho actually stopped writing on one of his data pads to look at him. No data to calculate probability, the Nexian said slowly. Interesting. The next morning, Daeho joined hundreds of other cadets in the main assembly hall. The space was enormous, with a ceiling that stretched up into darkness. Cadets sat in groups, mostly separated by species. The few mixed groups seemed uncomfortable, with members eyeing each other suspiciously. General Forth took the stage. Even among the Kroleks, he was huge. Battle scars covered his stone-like skin, and one of his red eyes had been replaced with a mechanical device that glowed softly. Cadets, his voice boomed across the hall without any amplification. You come here from across the galaxy believing you are the finest your species can offer. Most of you are wrong. A murmur ran through the assembled cadets. The Academy exists for one purpose, General Vorth continued. To forge the strongest into weapons worthy of protecting galactic civilization. The weak will be removed. The soft will be broken, only the hardest metal survives the forge. He gestured to a massive display screen that showed images of a deadly-looking planet surface. Your final trial awaits you in the Crucible. 200 square kilometers of death designed to test every aspect of military survival. For 3 centuries, only the strongest individuals have emerged alive. The screen showed images of past trials, cadets fighting alone against mechanical monsters, individuals racing across deadly terrain, solo survivors claiming victory over the bodies of the fallen. Remember this above all, General Vorth said, his mechanical eye focusing on different sections of the audience. Only one may claim victory. Trust no one. Depend on no one. Survive alone or die forgotten. As the cadets filed out after the assembly, Daeho noticed something that seemed to escape everyone else. He had listened carefully to the general's words and noticed what was said and what was not said. Only one may claim victory was not the same as only one may survive. The rules, as stated, did not actually forbid cooperation. They just assumed no one would think to try it. That evening, Daeho sat on his bed studying the Academy handbook while his roommates prepared for sleep. Jiwoo was quietly reading tactical manuals, his crystals dim with worry. Hyunwoo performed a ritual sword dance with a blade that glowed with energy. Minho calculated something on all 4 data pads at once. Hey Minho, Daeho said quietly. In your calculations, do you factor in cooperation between cadets? The Nexian's hands paused for the first time since Daeho had met him. There is no historical data for cooperation, Minho replied slowly. All trials show individual performance only. But the rules don't actually forbid working together, do they? Jiwoo's crystals shifted to bright yellow, a sign of surprise, in his pupil. Hyunwoo stopped his sword dance mid-move. No species has ever attempted large-scale cooperation, Jiwoo said in his wind chime voice. It would be considered weakness. Shameful. My people would rather die than accept help in battle, Hyunwoo added, but he did not sound entirely convinced. Daeho smiled and returned to his handbook. His human instructors had taught him that the best warriors were not those who fought alone. They were those who made everyone around them stronger. Maybe it was time the galaxy learned what humans really brought to the fight. 3 weeks into his time at the Academy, Daeho had learned that survival training meant something very different here than it did on Earth. While his human instructors had taught squad tactics and team coordination, the Academy focused entirely on individual excellence. The morning combat simulation took place in a massive chamber that could recreate any battlefield environment. Today, the instructors had chosen an urban warfare scenario with crumbling buildings and hidden enemies. Your objective is simple, announced Instructor Cax, a scarred Vraxian with battle-damaged armor grafted to his skin. Reach the extraction point. First 5 cadets to arrive pass the simulation. The rest repeat it until they succeed. 50. Cadets entered the simulation chamber. As soon as the exercise began, everyone scattered in different directions. Each cadet planned to use their species' natural advantages to reach the goal first. Daeho watched a group of Phelan cadets use their natural stealth abilities to slip between buildings like shadows. The Terrak cadets simply charged through obstacles. with their massive strength. Centauri cadets used their crystal skin to blend with the environment. But 20 minutes into the simulation, Daiho heard something that made him change course entirely. A cry for help echoed from a collapsed building near the center of the training area. He found Bei Sujin trapped under a heavy metal beam. The small feline female was one of the best stealth specialists in their class, but her light build made her helpless against the weight pinning her legs. "Leave me," Sujin gasped, her cat-like ears flat against her head. "Save your simulation score. I will find another way." Instead of continuing toward the extraction point, Daiho knelt beside the beam. He was not strong enough to lift it alone, but he noticed something the panicked Phelan had missed. The beam was balanced on some debris. If he could shift the fulcrum point. "When I say go, pull yourself out," he told her. Using a piece of broken concrete as a lever, Daiho managed to raise the beam just enough. Sujin scrambled free, her legs bruised but not broken. "Why did you help me?" she asked as they both limped toward the extraction point. "You could have reached there first without stopping." "On my world, we have a saying," Daiho replied. "A squad that leaves people behind is not a squad worth following." They reached the extraction point together, finishing in 8th and 9th place. Both had failed the simulation, but Sujin looked at the human with something like wonder in her large eyes. The next week brought a different kind of training. Individual combat assessment against mechanical opponents. Each cadet faced increasingly difficult challenges until they were defeated or chose to stop. Yoon Jae-sung, a massive Terak with arms like tree trunks, was dominating his opponents through pure strength. His people were known throughout the Sony galaxy as unstoppable warriors. But when the Academy deployed a speed-based combat drone, his advantages became weaknesses. The drone was too fast for Jae-sung to catch and too smart to get trapped. It darted around him, striking with electric prods that would have knocked down smaller opponents. The Terak was losing, and losing badly. "Predictable attack pattern," Daiho called out from the observation area. "It circles left after every third strike." Other cadets turned to stare at him. Giving advice during individual assessment was unheard of. Some species considered it cheating. But Jae-sung heard the advice and adjusted his strategy. When the drone completed its third strike and circled left, he was waiting. One massive hand caught the machine and crushed it completely. Later, as cadets filed out of the training facility, Jae-sung approached Daiho. "Why help me?" the Terak asked in his slow, deep voice. "My success does not benefit you." "Maybe not, directly," Daiho said. "But if you become better at fighting, that knowledge can help others too. And if others become better fighters, they might help me someday." Jae-sung considered this for a long moment. "Your thinking is strange, but not wrong." Word of Daiho's unusual behavior began to spread throughout the academy. Some cadets viewed his actions with suspicion. Han Do-yun, a proud hegemony noble, with purple skin and elaborate facial markings, was particularly vocal in his disapproval. "The human shows weakness," Do-yun announced during evening mealtime in the cafeteria. "His species sends their softest representative to prove they deserve. Galactic citizenship, pathetic." Do-yun sat with other cadets from dominant species. Krolex warriors, Vicarian nobles, and hegemony elites who saw cooperation as beneath their dignity. "True strength stands alone," agreed Kang Tae-wan, a Krolex whose family had produced academy graduates for generations. "The human will learn this when the real trials begin." But not everyone shared this view. At smaller tables scattered throughout the cafeteria, cadets from less powerful species listened to these conversations with different thoughts. Jiwoo's crystals shifted through nervous colors as he ate his meal. "Do you think Do-yun is right?" he asked quietly. "About cooperation being weakness?" "My people value honor above all," Hyunwoo said, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. "Yet I have seen Daiho's actions. There is a different kind of honor, in helping others succeed." Minho looked up from the calculation pad he carried everywhere. "I have been analyzing Academy historical data. Species with high cooperation rates in their home cultures show lower academy graduation rates, but correlation does not prove causation. What does that mean? Jiwoo asked. It means maybe the academy has been testing the wrong things. Instructor. Cax had been watching Daeho's behavior with growing interest. The scarred Vraxian had survived the academy's trials 30 years ago by being faster and more vicious than his competitors. He had graduated by stepping over the bodies of weaker cadets. But something about the humans' approach bothered him. Not because it was wrong, but because it might be right. During a private instructor meeting, Cax brought up his observations. The human cadet is exhibiting unprecedented behavior patterns, he reported to the other instructors. He consistently prioritizes group success over individual advancement. Weakness, growled Instructor Vex, the Krolex who had first escorted Daeho to his dormitory. The trials will correct this failing quickly. Perhaps, Cax replied. But I'm curious to see what happens when you put someone who thinks differently into a system designed around sameness. General Vorth had been receiving regular reports about the human exchange student. Initially, he had expected nothing remarkable. Humans were a new species with no military tradition worthy of galactic respect. They would serve as an interesting footnote in academy records, but these reports suggested something more complex. The human is building relationships across species lines that have never cooperated before, his aide reported. Phelan and Terek cadets have been seen training together. Zenthari are sharing tactical information with species they traditionally avoid. Monitor the situation, General Vorth ordered, but do not interfere. If the humans' methods have merit, the Crucible will reveal it. If they do not, the Crucible will eliminate the problem permanently. Back in the dormitory, Daeho lay on his bed studying not combat manuals or survival guides but academy social charts. He was mapping relationships between different species, identifying which groups had natural synergies and which had artificial conflicts. What are you working on? Jiwoo asked, his crystals glowing with curiosity. Daeho held up his datapad, showing a complex web of connections. I am trying to understand why some species work well together and others do not. Look at this. Phelan have excellent stealth abilities but poor strength. Terek have incredible strength but limited stealth. If they worked together, they would cover each other's weaknesses. Minho finished, his four hands pausing over his own calculations. Exactly. And if you add Zenthari tactical analysis and Nexian mathematical precision, you get something stronger than any individual could be alone. Hyunwoo stopped sharpening his energy blade. The Academy has operated for 3 centuries on the principle of individual excellence. You suggest they have been wrong the entire time. Not wrong, Daeho said carefully, just incomplete. Individual excellence is important, but imagine if that excellence could be shared and multiplied instead of wasted in competition. His 3 roommates looked at each other. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, they began to wonder if survival might mean something different than they had been taught. Outside their window, the stars of the galactic core glittered in the darkness. Each star represented civilizations that had risen to power through strength, cunning, and the willingness to stand alone against the universe. But perhaps, Daeho thought as he drifted off to sleep, it was time for something new among those ancient lights. 30 days remained until the final trial. The Academy's corridors buzzed with nervous energy as cadets pushed themselves harder in training. Most followed the traditional path of individual preparation, but Daeho had begun something entirely different. He called it Operation Pack Bond, though he kept that name to himself. The plan was simple in concept but difficult in execution. He would identify cadets whose abilities complemented each other and bring them together in ways the Academy had never seen before. The first breakthrough came in the electromagnetic warfare class. Kim So-young, a quiet cadet from the Lumina species, sat alone as usual. Her people could see across the entire electromagnetic spectrum, making them excellent scouts and technicians, but their light build and peaceful culture made them targets for more aggressive species. Sitting 3 rows away was Oh Chang-min, a member of the ferret race. His people could manipulate magnetic fields with their minds, making them valuable for ship operations and equipment maintenance. Like the Lumina, they were often overlooked by warrior-focused cadets. During a break in the lesson, Dae-ho approached them both. "So young you can see electromagnetic signatures, right?" he asked. "And Chang-min, you can manipulate magnetic fields." Both cadets nodded cautiously. They had barely spoken to each other despite months at the academy. "What if you worked together during exercises?" Dae-ho suggested. "So Young could identify electronic systems and their weak points. Chang-min could then disrupt them precisely. You would be the perfect electronic warfare team." So Young's large eyes widened. "But we are not the same species. Our peoples have never worked together." "Why should that matter?" Dae-ho asked. "Your abilities fit together like puzzle pieces. The academy never said teammates had to be from the same world." The next day, during a tactical simulation, So Young and Chang-min tried Dae-ho's suggestion. So Young used her enhanced vision to map the enemy's electronic systems through the walls. Chang-min then used his magnetic abilities to disable their weapons and communications at exactly the right moments. Their team won the simulation in record time. Word spread quickly through the academy. Two cadets from completely different species had achieved something neither could do alone. Other cadets began to whisper about the human who had somehow made it happen. Dae-ho did not stop there. He spent his free time studying cadet files and observing training sessions. Soon, he identified another perfect pairing. Shin Dong-hyuk belonged to the toxin species, beings who had evolved on a world filled with deadly chemicals. His people could survive in environments that would kill most other life forms instantly. But they were slow and often struggled with the academy's physical challenges. Jung Minjae was from the purifier race, beings whose bodies could neutralize almost any poison or toxin. They were excellent medics and support personnel, but their peaceful nature made combat training difficult for them. "Your people can survive anywhere, but you struggle with speed," Dae-ho told Dong-hyuk during a cafeteria conversation. "Minjae's people can heal anyone, but they avoid dangerous areas. What if you protected each other?" "How would that work?" Minjae asked nervously. His species rarely spoke to members of more aggressive races. Dong-hyuk goes into toxic areas and gathers intelligence or resources. Minjae stays in safer zones but provides medical support when Dong-hyuk returns. And Minjae, your healing abilities could help Dong-hyuk recover faster from environmental damage. The partnership worked even better than Dae-ho had hoped. During survival exercises, the pair could explore areas that other cadets could not even approach. They began bringing back valuable resources and information that helped other struggling cadets. But Dae-ho's biggest challenge came when Nam Ho-jin approached him for help. Ho-jin was a member of the Thakor warlord caste, a proud warrior species that had dominated their sector of space for centuries. His people valued strength and honor above all else, but Ho-jin was failing the academy's theoretical courses, and academic failure meant dismissal. "I do not understand these calculations and strategies," Ho-jin admitted, his pride clearly wounded by having to ask for help. "My people learn through battle, not books, but the academy requires both." This was exactly the kind of problem Dae-ho had been hoping to solve. He knew several cadets who excelled at theoretical work, but struggled with practical applications. "I have an idea," Dae-ho said, "but it requires you to work with cadets your people might consider beneath you." Ho-jin's jaw tightened. "Explain." "Park Ji-woo is brilliant at tactical theory, but his people are not warriors. Choi Min-ho can calculate battle odds instantly, but has never held a real weapon. What if they taught you theory while you taught them practical combat skills?" "A warlord does not learn from lesser species," Ho-jin said automatically. "A failed warlord goes home in shame," Dae-ho replied quietly. "A graduated warlord who learned from others brings honor to his entire clan." Ho-jin was quiet for a long moment. Finally he nodded. The study group that formed around Ho-jin became the model for others. Ji-woo would explain tactical concepts using examples from Thakor military history that Ho-jin could relate to. Min-ho would break down complex equations into practical battle scenarios. In return, Hojin taught them combat techniques and warrior mindset that no amount of book learning could provide. Within 2 weeks, Hojin's grades improved dramatically. More importantly, Jiwoo and Minho gained confidence they had never possessed before. Other cadets began forming similar groups. Lee Hyunwoo, despite his Vicarian pride, began teaching blade work to cadets who helped him with academy protocol and etiquette. Yoon Ji-sung shared his strength training methods with anyone willing to help him study electronic systems. The academy's instructors noticed the change immediately. Cross-species cooperation has increased by 300%. In the past month, Instructor Cax reported during a staff meeting, cadets are sharing knowledge and resources at unprecedented levels. This violates the fundamental principles of academy training, protested Instructor Thane, a rigid hegemony educator. Individual excellence cannot be achieved through group dependency. Yet individual performance scores have increased across all participating cadets, Cax pointed out. The humans' methods appear to be making everyone stronger, not weaker. General Vorth listened to the debate with growing interest. Are you suggesting our methods have been flawed for 3 centuries? I am suggesting we may have been incomplete, Cax replied carefully. The human is not replacing individual excellence, he is multiplying it. Not everyone embraced the changes. Han Do-yun and his faction of elite cadets viewed the cooperation with disgust. Look at them, Do-yun said, gesturing toward a mixed group of cadets studying together in the recreation area. Thakor warriors learning from crystal-skinned weaklings. Tarak giants taking advice from creatures they could crush with one hand. It is unnatural. The Academy will correct this corruption during the final trial, agreed Kang Tae-won. The Crucible does not care about friendship or cooperation. It only understands strength. But even some of Do-yun's supporters began to waver. When they saw former rivals working together and improving dramatically, questions arose. Kim Woo-jin, a hegemony noble who usually followed Do-yun's lead, watched a group of 6 different species successfully complete a combat simulation that had defeated him 3 times. Perhaps there is something to learn from this approach, he said quietly. You would lower yourself to their level, Do-yun snapped. I would raise myself to graduation level, Woo-jin replied. Dae-ho continued building his network with careful precision. He brought together natural enemies and showed them how their differences could become advantages. He paired confident cadets with insecure ones, creating mentorship relationships that helped both sides grow. The breakthrough moment came during a large-scale wargame exercise. 50 cadets were divided into 2 teams and asked to capture a defended position. The traditional approach would be for each team to organize by species, using familiar hierarchies and tactics. Instead, Dae-ho's network formed integrated squads. Felon scouts provided intelligence, Tarak warriors served as assault troops, Zenthari tacticians coordinated movements, Nexians calculated optimal approaches, and support species provided medical care and resource management. The mixed teams dominated the traditional ones completely. After the exercise, cadets who had never considered cooperation began approaching Dae-ho's allies. They wanted to understand how such different beings could work together so effectively. It is simple, Jiwoo explained to a group of curious cadets, his crystals glowing with confidence. We do not try to be the same. We try to be better together. As the final trial approached, the Academy found itself divided into 2 camps. The traditionalists, led by Do-yun, prepared for individual survival as their species had always done. The cooperators, inspired by Dae-ho's example, prepared for something the galaxy had never seen before. In his dormitory room, Dae-ho reviewed his growing network. 87 cadets from 31 different species now worked together regularly. They shared resources, knowledge, and most importantly, trust. Do you think it will work in the Crucible? Jiwoo asked as they prepared for sleep. Dae-ho looked out at the stars through their small window. I think we are about to find out what happens when you bring a pack. The transport ships descended through the atmosphere of Crucible Moon like falling stars. Each ship carried 40 cadets who would be dropped at random locations across the deadly landscape. Only 20 were expected to leave alive. Dae-ho pressed his face against the small window, and studied the terrain below. The Academy had chosen this moon carefully over the centuries. Volcanic regions glowed with deadly heat in the north. Frozen wastelands stretched across the south where temperatures could freeze blood in seconds. Between them lay toxic swamps that bubbled with chemicals that could melt metal. Scattered throughout the landscape were the things that made the Crucible truly dangerous. Combat constructs moved like mechanical predators through every region. These machines had been designed by the galaxy's best military engineers for one purpose: to kill cadets who were not strong enough to graduate. "Remember the signal system?" Daeho whispered to his nearby allies as their ship shuddered toward the drop zone. 3 flashes of reflected sunlight means rally point Alpha. 5 flashes means danger nearby. 7 flashes means medical emergency. Around him, cadets from his network nodded quietly. They had practiced the signals during late-night training sessions when the instructors were not watching. It was a simple system using small mirrors that every cadet carried in their survival kit. Han Do-yun sat across the transport bay with his traditional faction. The hegemony noble's purple skin was marked with ritual scars that showed his readiness to face death alone. He looked at Daeho's group with disgust. "Listen to them whisper like frightened children," Do-yun said loud enough for everyone to hear. "True warriors need no one but themselves. We will see," Daeho replied calmly. The drop began at dawn. One by one, cadets were pushed from the transport ships at different locations across the Crucible. Daeho found himself falling toward a rocky area near the edge of the volcanic region. His parachute deployed automatically, but he still hit the ground hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs. Around him, the Crucible stretched in every direction. The air was hot and thick with volcanic dust. In the distance, he could see other cadets landing and immediately beginning to move toward whatever resources they could find. This was how the trial had always worked. 200 cadets would scatter across the moon and begin a desperate race for survival. The strong would claim the best resources and shelter. The weak would die quickly. The survivors would eventually be forced together for a final battle, where only the strongest individual would claim victory. But Daeho had spent weeks preparing for something different. He pulled out his signal mirror and flashed 3 quick bursts of reflected sunlight toward the north, then the south, then the east. The signals were answered almost immediately. Small flashes of light appeared from multiple locations across the landscape. His network was responding. By midday, small groups of allied cadets were moving toward predetermined rally points across the Crucible. They traveled carefully, using the natural abilities of their species to avoid the mechanical predators that hunted other cadets. Bei Su-jin used her Phelan stealth to scout ahead of her group, identifying threats before they could attack. Yoon Jae-sung carried equipment for smaller cadets, his teric strength allowing the group to move faster than any individual could alone. The first major test came when Park Ji-woo's group encountered a pack of hunter constructs near Rally Point, Beta. The mechanical wolves were designed to overwhelm single targets with coordinated attacks. Against individuals, they were nearly unbeatable. But Ji-woo's group was not composed of individuals fighting alone. Kim So-young used her electromagnetic vision to identify the construct's control frequencies. Oh Changmin disrupted their coordination systems with precisely applied magnetic pulses. Shin Dong-hyuk, immune to the toxic gas the constructs released, moved close enough for Jung Min-jae to analyze their weak points. When the attack came, it was not 6 constructs against 1 cadet. It was 6 confused, partially disabled machines against a coordinated team that knew exactly how to defeat them. The constructs were destroyed in minutes. Word of the victory spread through the network. Using the signal system, other groups began adapting the same tactics, sharing information about construct weaknesses and environmental hazards through flashes of reflected light. By the end of the first day, something unprecedented was happening in the Crucible. Instead of 200 individuals struggling alone for survival, 87 cadets were working together in coordinated groups. Academy observers monitoring the trial from orbit could not believe what they were seeing. Group 17 just successfully raided the mountain resource cache, reported Instructor Vex, staring at his displays in confusion. That cache was designed to be unreachable by individual cadets. How many casualties? Asked General Vorth. None, sir. They used a coordinated climbing technique with multiple species supporting each other. The Lumina scouts identified safe paths, the Terrak provided anchor points, and the Zenthari calculated optimal load distributions. General Vorth studied the tactical displays showing cadet movements across the crucible. Instead of the usual, scattered pattern of individuals hunting each other, he saw organized groups moving with purpose and coordination. What is the current casualty count? He asked. 15 confirmed deaths, sir. All among cadets who refused to join the cooperation network. In 300 years of academy trials, that was the lowest first-day casualty count in recorded history. Meanwhile, in the Crucible, Han Do-yun's traditional faction was discovering that individual excellence was not enough against the Moon's deadliest challenges. Do-yun himself had claimed a defensible cave in the volcanic region, but he was surrounded by threats he could not handle alone. Thermal constructs that were immune to heat weapons prowled the area. Toxic gas vents made movement dangerous without proper equipment, and other individual cadets saw his position as valuable enough to fight for. This is madness, muttered Kang Tae-wan as he struggled to cross a frozen river alone. His Krolek strength meant nothing against ice that could support a group working together, but would break under individual weight. Some of Do-yun's supporters began to reconsider their positions. When they saw coordinated teams moving safely through areas that were killing individual cadets, the appeal of cooperation became harder to ignore. Kim Woo-jin, the hegemony noble who had questioned Do-yun's methods back at the academy, made a Tiao decision that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. He used his signal mirror to flash the sequence that meant, "Request to join group." The response came quickly. A mixed team of 6 cadets changed course to intercept him. They welcomed him, without question or demand for explanation. "Why help me?" he asked as they shared food and equipment. "Because we are stronger together," replied Lee Hyun-woo, the Vicarian warrior who had once declared that his people fought alone. The human taught us that strength is not about standing apart. It is about lifting others up. As night fell over, the Crucible, the true scope of Daeho's revolution, became clear. Groups of allied cadets had established secure camps in every major region of the Moon. They shared resources, information, and protection in ways the Academy had never imagined possible. Most importantly, they were not just surviving. They were thriving. Traditional doctrine said the Crucible would eliminate the weak and forge the strong through isolation and competition. Instead, it was proving that cooperation could transform anyone into something stronger than they could be alone. In his sheltered camp in the toxic swamp region, Daeho sat with his original roommates and studied the night sky. Signals flashed, occasionally between distant groups maintaining communication across the network. "It is working," Jiwoo said, his crystals glowing with amazement. "We are actually changing how this trial works." "The Academy will not be pleased," warned Minho, calculating probabilities on his datapad. "We are breaking 3 centuries of tradition." "Maybe it is time for new traditions," Hyunwoo said, surprising them all with his acceptance of change. Daeho nodded but remained focused on the bigger picture. The first day had gone better than he had hoped, but 5 more days remained. The Academy would not let their most sacred trial be transformed without a fight. Somewhere in the Crucible's control center, he knew, plans were being made to test his network in ways that would determine whether cooperation was truly stronger than competition. The real trial was just beginning. By the 3rd day of the trial, Daeho's network had grown beyond his most optimistic projections. What had started with 87 allied cadets now included 112 members from 38 different species. Even some of Han Do-yun's traditional supporters had abandoned individual tactics to join cooperative groups. The transformation was visible from orbit. Instead of scattered individuals fighting for scraps, the Crucible now hosted organized communities. Allied cadets had established supply lines between regions, shared intelligence about construct movements, and developed tactics that turned the Moon's deadliest challenges into manageable obstacles. In the Academy's observation center, heated debates raged among the instructors. "This is not a military trial," protested Instructor Thane. "This is a social experiment that makes a mockery of our traditions." "The cadets are demonstrating tactical innovation and adaptive leadership," countered Instructor Cax. "Surely these are military virtues worth recognizing." General Vorth ended the argument with a single command: "Activate the Raveners." The Ravener constructs had been built as the Crucible's ultimate predators. Each machine stood 3 meters tall and moved on 6 legs that could navigate any terrain. Their weapons could cut through most armor, and their sensors could track multiple targets simultaneously. Most importantly, they had been designed to hunt in packs. In the 300-year history of the Academy, Raveners had only been deployed 12 times. They were saved for trials where too many cadets survived the initial challenges. Each deployment had successfully reduced the survivor count to acceptable levels. 6 Ravener units were released into different regions of the Crucible. The first attack came at dawn on the 4th day. A group of 15 Allied cadets had established a camp in the desert region, thinking themselves safe from the volcanic and frozen zone's primary threats. They were wrong. The Raveners approached silently, using active camouflage that made them nearly invisible until they were ready to strike. Traditional Academy tactics called for cadets to scatter when faced with multiple superior opponents, hoping individual speed and skill would allow someone to escape. But these cadets had learned different lessons from their human ally. Instead of running, they formed a defensive circle with the strongest fighters on the outside. Kim So-young's electromagnetic vision tracked the approaching constructs through their camouflage. Young Min-jae identified their weapon systems and charging cycles. Park Ji-woo calculated optimal positioning for maximum defensive coverage. When the Raveners attacked, they found something they had never encountered before: coordinated resistance. Yoon Jae-sung and 3 other Tarak warriors absorbed the initial assault, their massive strength allowing them to survive hits that would have killed smaller cadets. While the constructs focused on these obvious threats, Phelan stealth specialists circled behind to attack vulnerable sensor arrays. The battle was fierce and lasted nearly an hour. 2 cadets were seriously wounded and 1 Ravener was completely destroyed. But most importantly, the group survived intact and learned crucial information about the construct's capabilities. This information was immediately shared across the network using the signal system. When the second Ravener pack attacked a mountain camp 6 hours later, the defenders were ready. They had improvised weapons specifically designed to exploit the construct's weak points. They had developed formations that maximized their defensive capabilities while minimizing casualties. The second battle lasted only 20 minutes. 3 Raveners were destroyed with no cadet deaths. By the evening of the 4th day, coordinated cadet teams had defeated or driven off all 6 Ravener packs. The constructs designed to cull excessive survivors had instead become learning opportunities. That made the network even stronger. General Vorth stared at the tactical displays in disbelief. "Casualty count?" 23 confirmed deaths, sir," reported his aide. "All among individuals who refused cooperation. Current survivor count is 177 cadets. Impossible. The trial is designed to eliminate at least 80% of participants. The cooperation network has changed the fundamental dynamics, sir. They are sharing resources, coordinating defenses, and adapting to threats faster than our scenarios anticipated." Han Do-yoon's remaining traditionalist faction was down to fewer than 20 cadets. The hegemony noble himself had survived through a combination of individual skill and increasingly desperate tactics, but his position was becoming untenable. Isolated in his volcanic cave, surrounded by threats he could not defeat alone, Do-yun faced a choice that would have been unthinkable when the trial began. He could continue fighting alone and almost certainly die, or he could abandon everything he believed about individual supremacy. The decision was made for him when thermal constructs surrounded his position. 6 heat-immune machines moved in for a coordinated kill, and Do-yun knew he could not defeat them all. The rescue came from an unexpected source. A mixed team led by Lee Hyun-woo, the Vicarian warrior whose own people valued individual honor above all else, had detected Do-yun's situation and chosen to intervene. "Why?" Do-Yun demanded as the team fought off the constructs that would have killed him. Why help someone who has opposed you? Because leaving you to die would make us weaker, not stronger, Hyun-woo replied, his energy blade cutting through a construct's armor. The human taught us that strength is not about who you defeat. It is about who you save. As night fell on the fourth day, even the most stubborn individual fighters began joining the cooperation network. The evidence was overwhelming. Working together was not just more effective than fighting alone. It was the only way to survive the Crucible's escalating challenges. In the Academy's command center, General Vorth faced the most difficult decision of his career. The trial had completely departed from its intended parameters. Instead of forging individual champions through brutal selection, it was creating something entirely new, a unified force that treated former enemies as allies and impossible challenges as shared problems to solve. "Sir," his aide reported nervously, "the surviving cadets are beginning to consolidate into larger groups. If current trends continue, we may have over 150 graduates. That is 7 times the normal survivor rate." "Yes, sir. The cooperation network has essentially eliminated the trial's selection pressure." General Vorth studied the displays showing cadet camps scattered across the Crucible. In each location, beings from species that had been enemies for millennia worked together as if they had been allies their entire lives. "Initiate the convergence protocol," he ordered finally. "Force all remaining cadets to the central arena. If they wish to cooperate, let them face the ultimate test together." The convergence was the Academy's final solution for trials that deviated from acceptable parameters. All surviving cadets would be forced into a single location and faced with challenges designed to break any possible cooperation. It had never failed to reduce survivor numbers to acceptable levels, but it had never faced anything like Daeho's network. As evacuation signals began broadcasting across the Crucible, allied groups received the message with calm determination rather than panic. They had spent 4 days learning to work together. Now they would face the Academy's ultimate challenge not as individuals struggling for personal survival, but as something the galaxy had never seen before. A unified force of different species working toward a common goal. In the toxic swamp where Daeho's group had established their base camp, the human exchange student looked up at the evacuation signal and smiled. "Time to show them what we have really learned," he told his allies. The final test was about to begin, but the Academy was no longer testing individual cadets. It was testing the future of galactic cooperation itself. The convergence arena sat in the center of the Crucible like a massive crater carved from black stone. For 3 centuries, this had been where Academy trials ended in brutal individual combat. The strongest would claim victory over the bodies of the weak, proving themselves worthy of graduation. But as 168 cadets descended into the arena, something unprecedented was about to unfold. Instead of scattering to claim individual positions, the Allied cadets moved in coordinated formations. Species that had been mortal enemies for millennia took defensive positions beside each other. Phelan scouts shared intelligence with Krolex warriors. Xanthari tacticians coordinated with Terek assault troops. General Vorth watched from the observation deck high above the arena. His scarred face showed no emotion, but his mechanical eye glowed brighter as tactical displays updated with impossible readings. "Sir, they are not engaging each other," reported his aide. "The cooperation network is maintaining cohesion even under convergence conditions." "Then we will test that cohesion," General Vorth replied grimly. The first wave of constructs emerged from hidden chambers around the arena floor. 50 Guardian units, each designed to overwhelm multiple opponents through superior firepower and armor. In normal trials, these machines would force cadets to scatter and fight individually for survival. The Allied response was swift and coordinated. Kim So-young's electromagnetic vision mapped every construct's position and weapon systems. Her intelligence was passed instantly to Park Ji-woo, whose tactical genius devised countermeasures in real time. Choi Min-ho's 4 hands calculated optimal targeting solutions, while Jung Min-jae identified structural weak points. but it was the execution that truly amazed the observers. Teams of mixed species moved like a single organism across the arena floor. Yoon Jae-sung led Tarak heavy assault units in direct engagements, drawing construct fire away from more vulnerable allies. Bae Soo-jin coordinated Phelan stealth teams that struck at undefended sensor arrays and weapon systems. Most remarkably, former enemies supported each other without hesitation. When Nam Ho-jin, the proud Thakur warlord, took a construct blast meant for a small Lumina medic, he did so without thought for the ancient hostility between their peoples. The 50 Guardian constructs were destroyed in 18 minutes with only minor casualties among the cadets. Impossible, breathed Instructor Vex from the observation deck. Guardian units have never been defeated so quickly. Deploy the Apex Predator, General Vorth ordered. A section of the arena floor opened, with grinding mechanical noise. What emerged was the Academy's ultimate weapon, a single construct the size of a building, armed with weapons that could level city blocks and protected by armor that had never been penetrated. The Apex Predator had been deployed only 3 times in Academy history. Each time it had reduced cadet survivors to the single digits within minutes. It moved on massive legs that shook the ground with each step, and its weapon arrays tracked toward the largest concentrations of cadets. Traditional doctrine called for immediate dispersal when facing overwhelming force. Scatter and hope individual, speed could preserve someone for final victory. But the Allied cadets had learned different lessons. Instead of running, they moved closer together. Form the spiral, called out Daeho's voice across the arena. It was a formation they had practiced during late-night training sessions, designed for exactly this situation. The cadets arranged themselves in a defensive spiral with the strongest, fighters on the outside and support specialists protected in the center. As the Apex Predator's weapons opened fire, the formation began to move. The spiral rotated like a living thing, with each cadet taking their turn at the dangerous outer edge before rotating inward to recover. No single individual had to bear the full brunt of the construct's assault. The formation absorbed damage collectively and distributed it across the entire group. While the spiral absorbed the Apex Predator's attacks, specialist teams executed coordinated strikes against its weak points. Shin Dong-hyuk used his toxic immunity to approach areas where the construct's own weapons had created chemical hazards. Oh Chang-min disrupted its targeting systems with magnetic pulses. Kim So-young identified power coupling locations that Young Min-jae determined could be overloaded. The battle lasted 3 hours. Several cadets were seriously wounded, but the Cooperation Network's medics kept everyone in the fight. Most importantly, the impossible was happening. The Academy's ultimate weapon was losing. The end came when Lee Hyun-woo, supported by precise calculations from Min-ho and protected by covering fire from dozens of Allied cadets, managed to reach the construct's primary power core. His energy blade, guided by shared intelligence from the entire network, struck at exactly the right moment in exactly the right location. The Apex Predator collapsed in a shower of sparks and debris. 168 cadets stood together in the suddenly quiet arena. Not one had been left behind. Not one had been abandoned to save the others. They had faced the Academy's deadliest challenge as a unified force and emerged victorious. General Vorth stared at the tactical displays. In stunned silence, the readings showed something that should have been impossible. 0 cadet casualties during the final trial. Every single member of the Cooperation Network had survived challenges designed to kill the vast majority of participants. "Sir," his aide said quietly. "What are your orders?" General Vorth looked down at the arena where cadets from 38 different species were celebrating together. Traditional enemies embraced as brothers. Ancient hierarchies had been replaced by mutual respect based on shared sacrifice and common goals. The Academy had been founded on the principle that only individual excellence could protect galactic civilization, but these cadets had proven something that challenged 3 centuries of military doctrine. That cooperation could achieve what no individual ever could. "Open communications to all participants," General Vorth ordered. His voice boomed across the arena. "Cadets of the Galactic Military Academy, You have completed the Crucible trial under circumstances unprecedented in our history. The challenges you faced were designed to test individual excellence through elimination of the weak. The arena fell silent as cadets looked up toward the observation deck. Instead, you have demonstrated something our instructors did not expect to see. You have shown that strength can come not from standing alone, but from lifting others up. You have proven that cooperation between different species is not weakness, but a force multiplier that makes everyone stronger. General Vorth paused, knowing that his next words would reshape Academy doctrine forever. By unanimous decision of the Academy leadership, all 168 surviving cadets are hereby declared graduates of the Galactic Military Academy. The roar that erupted from the arena could be heard across the entire moon. Later, as cadets were processed for graduation and reassignment, Daeho found himself called to General Vorth's private office. The massive Krolex studied the young human with eyes that had seen 3 centuries of military tradition. "Your species sent one representative to our academy," General Vorth said. "That representative has fundamentally changed how we understand warfare, leadership, and the nature of strength itself." "I just applied what my people learned long ago," Daeho replied, "that the strongest pack is not the one with the most powerful individual, but the one where every member makes the others stronger. Your pack bonding concept will be studied and implemented throughout the galactic military," General Vorth continued. "We are recommending you for immediate assignment to Academy staff with a mandate to develop new training protocols based on interspecies cooperation." Daeho looked out the office window toward the transport ships that would carry his fellow graduates to assignments across the galaxy. Each ship contained mixed crews from multiple species who now trusted each other with their lives. "With respect, General, I think my work here is done. These cadets will carry the cooperation protocols to every corner of galactic space. They will teach others what we learned together. The network will grow on its own." As Daeho prepared to return to Earth, he reflected on what had been accomplished. The Academy's final trial still had a 90% casualty rate in the official records. But now that number referred to the casualty rate among outdated assumptions about individual supremacy. The galaxy's military academies began implementing cooperation protocols within months. Ancient enemies discovered they could be powerful allies. Species that had fought for millennia learned to see each other as assets rather than threats. Years later, historians would mark the Crucible trial of Academy Year 2387 as the moment when galactic military doctrine evolved from competition-based individual excellence to cooperation-based collective strength. But the cadets who lived through it would remember something simpler: the day they learned that true strength comes not from being the strongest alone, but from making everyone around you stronger. The SAO, human exchange student, had taught them that lesson well, and the galaxy would never be the same.